Welcome to my primer on generative AI. I'm Jules White. I'm a professor in computer science at Vanderbilt University, and I'm also the director of the Vanderbilt Initiative on the Future of Learning in Generative AI. And this is our initiative at Vanderbilt to help make sure that Vanderbilt is a world leader and innovator in the use of generative AI. And so I'm going to talk to you about how we approach generative AI within Vanderbilt and how you should be thinking about generative AI and what you should know about it, what you should think about in terms of training your workforce, and also in terms of the capabilities and why it's so important. Now, this is a technology that in October of 2022, if you had asked me, is something like ChatGPT going to exist in your lifetime? I would have told you flat out, no way, never going to happen, don't believe it, never. And boy, was I wrong. And what I want to show you is the depth of capability that's there and why this is so exciting to me. Now, as a computer scientist, I often feel like I'm looking up into a telescope saying, I promise in 5 years we'll make it to that planet over there. And then one day I was looking at my telescope and I looked over my shoulder and a UFO had landed behind me. And that's what ChatGPT is. It's like this incredible new alien technology that now as we're kicking it, it's beaming trees around the earth and solving all kinds of incredible problems that I never thought a computer would be able to solve. And so what I'm excited to do is to show you and help you explore all of these capabilities and sort of understand it in a different way from what you may have seen in the news. Now, one of the things I want to take a moment to mention is I teach a course on prompt engineering for ChatGPT on Coursera, and there's over 150,000 people that at the time of this filming have taken the course. And a lot of what you're going to see is their ideas, their innovation that has filtered back to me. And I'm going to be talking about what I'm seeing them doing and how they're innovating out in the workplace. So I want to give a special thank you to everybody who's taken that class and all of the feedback that I've received. Now, whenever we start talking about generative AI, we need to start putting a mental model in place of what it really is. We hear AI used all over the place, generative AI. Generative AI is a type of AI. And really, a lot of the excitement that we're seeing is about generative AI. So I want to encourage you, when you start talking about AI, instead talk about generative AI, because generative AI is one of the most exciting things that I've ever seen. And it's what's really creating a lot of the excitement. Now, when we start talking about generative AI, a lot of people really don't have a mental model of what it is, how it works, what to do with it. So I want to give you that mental model. Imagine text messaging. We all know how it works. You go and type in a message and you send it off, and another human being, probably your friend, is going to type in a response to you and send it back. And generative AI works really similar to text messaging, or at least a lot of the interfaces that we use for it. You go in and you type in a message, you send it off, but generative AI, rather than your friend, texts you back. Or you send a message off and generative AI, rather than your friend, creates a photo and sends it back to you, or creates a video, or creates a recording. It's just like text messaging, except that we're not talking to another human being anymore, we're talking to generative AI. Now, whenever we start talking about generative AI, it's important to have some basic terminology. One of the really important terms that you need to know is a prompt. A prompt is the message that you type into that generative AI text messaging or chat application. It's the message that you're sending off to the AI that it's going to respond to. And when it sends you a message back, that message that it's sending you back is the output. Now, we see a bunch of examples of potential prompts on the screen here, like write a poem about the French Revolution. And if you've got the right type of friend, they could write a poem about the French Revolution. Now, these prompts aren't particularly good prompts, and we'll talk about that more later, but these are all things that you could go and type in and send off. Now, whenever I start looking in the news about generative AI recently, and since it's come out, I feel really sort of disheartened because it's really missing the point. And I want to encourage you to rethink what is possible with generative AI and how it's going to impact us. Now, when I look at the news, what I see is I asked ChatGPT this question that was potentially bad or worded poorly, and I got this bad answer out. And therefore, ChatGPT is useless. And that's completely the wrong way of thinking about generative AI and these tools. You want to think about iterating and refining and creating content through a conversation. And you want to think about not just going and asking one question, getting an answer, and throwing it away if it's not perfect. Instead, you want to think about getting it back and then providing feedback on what could be improved and continuing to refine it. Just like if you had an assistant and you brought them to work and on their first day of work they handed in some work to you and it wasn't perfect, you're not going to fire them and tell them it's terrible and say that person's an idiot and get rid of them. No, you're going to work with them and train them and help explain more about what your task was, because you could have communicated with them wrong too. So let's take a look at what it means to refine content through a conversation. So I'm going to give ChatGPT a task that I don't think I could find somebody here in Nashville and maybe in the United States that could do it as well or as fast. And I'm going to start off with, let's create a meal plan. We all have to eat, right? So please create a meal plan for my family that is based on a fusion of food from Ethiopia and Uzbekistan. I want to eat keto and up to 2,000 calories per day. Pick dishes where the ingredients are easy to get from an average US grocery store. That's a really hard task. I don't know who I would find to do that task for me. And it's got a lot of complexities to it, like average US grocery store ingredients. What does that mean? And like, who has the knowledge of that? And trying to find somebody to accomplish this task would be really hard. So what does ChatGPT say? It says, here's a sample meal plan that combines flavors from Ethiopia and Uzbekistan, also being keto friendly and within a 2,000 calorie per day limit, and that's nearly instantaneous. And then it says breakfast, scrambled egg with sauteed onions, tomatoes, and Ethiopian berber spice mix. And then notice what it does. In parentheses, it says, made with chili powder, paprika, garlic powder, ginger, cumin, and coriander. It's signaling to us these are ingredients you can get from an average US grocery store. This isn't something that you can't make. It's something that is makeable with average US grocery store ingredients, and these all are. Now, this is a draft. It's creating draft output for us that we can go and work with and refine. Now, if this was in the news, the next thing I would see would be, this will never replace a nutritionist. It's a terrible tool. You said 2,000 calories per day. It didn't even give you serving sizes. It's completely useless. And that's completely the wrong way of thinking about these tools. Now, the analogy I give for this is, imagine if somebody handed Michelangelo a new hammer. And Michelangelo walks up to the piece of stone, and he whacks the stone, and then he looks at the stone and he says, it doesn't look like the Pietà or some other beautiful sculpture, and he throws the hammer down in disgust. And he says, it's a terrible tool, I'll never use it again. And that's what's happening every day when we go and look at the news and they have these ridiculous articles. No, what does Michelangelo do? He takes the hammer and he hits the stone and he hits it again and he hits it again and he continues to refine and iterate on the stone with the tool until he gets a beautiful output. And he also understands that his skill with the tool is equally, if not more important. And he has to know how to use the tool, he has to refine his skill with the tool, and he has to educate himself. And he doesn't just go and say, well, the tool didn't get it right on the first time, so the tool's stupid and I'm never going to use it. No, that's not what he does. He iterates and refines and works with it, and he also understands that he's an equal participant in this. So let's say we really care about the serving sizes. Well, what do? We just follow up. We ask in the same conversation, can you give me an approximate serving size for myself for each dish that was within my 2,000 calorie per day limit? And what does ChatGPT say? It says, sure, here are approximate serving sizes for each dish based on a 2,000 calorie per day limit. And now it says breakfast, 2 eggs, half a cup of onions, half a cup of tomatoes, 1 teaspoon of spice mix. Now I know if there was in the news, the next thing would be, you said keto and that thing says half a cup of onions. The macronutrients are all wrong on that, way too many carbs. And if we really care about carbohydrates or macronutrients or whatever it is, we can go and keep refining and shaping the content with follow-up questions to try to explore it and make it better. But I'm going to take it in a different direction to help you kind of understand the capability and depth of possibilities with this tool. And that is because macronutrients aren't my real problem with this meal plan. Like, I'm going to have macronutrient variation all the time just because I don't have enough willpower. My real challenge with this meal plan is that I have a 9-year-old and he's an adventurous eater, but the real challenge is getting him to try the dish in the first place. So I thought about it. Can I use ChatGPT to help me solve this problem? So I said, my son is 9. Sometimes he won't try new dishes. To make this culinary adventure more fun for him, can you create a short Pokemon battle story to go with each dish? I'll read the stories with him before dinner to get him excited about trying the new food. Make sure the story ends with a cliffhanger that will motivate him to try the food. That's a really complex task. Good luck finding somebody that can go and generate that meal plan and then write convincing Pokemon battle stories with cliffhangers for a 9-year-old. And what does ChatGPT say? Certainly. Story. Pikachu and his friends were exploring the wilds of Ethiopia when they were suddenly ambushed by a group of sneaky Pokemon thieves. As they raced through the dense jungle, they stumbled upon a hidden cave filled with treasure. And then it goes on to say, in the end, they emerged victorious, but not before the dragon left a fiery spice that imbued their breakfast eggs with a flavorful kick. Can you help Pikachu and his friends defeat the bear dragon and enjoy the spicy breakfast? That's incredible. Now, before November of last year, we didn't have any computing capabilities that were generally available, that somebody could go in and just dump in, create Pokemon battle stories to motivate a 9-year-old to eat a bunch of dishes that we just dreamed up. Nothing that we had could even come close to that. And if I'd had to go as a software engineer and tried to program it, I couldn't have done it. And in a paragraph of text, we've gone from this meal plan, we refined it, we've added serving sizes, and now we've got battle stories to go with it. What else can we do with ChatGPT and generative AI? Well, I thought about what we do with my son at the dinner table, and we love to talk with him about what he's learning at school. And he loves math, and he loves to play math games on the iPad. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool if I could get ChatGPT to play a math game with him? And that way, when we're sitting at the table, he can read the Pokemon battle story, and then he can play this cool math game, and it'll make it this really exciting experience for him. So I said, I'd like you to play a math game with my 9-year-old to teach him about division with fractions and nutrition. Ask him questions one at a time involving Pokemon and these topics, and make it into a game. When he wins, the Pokemon win. Ask the first question. And this is beginning to use a technique called prompt engineering to make all of this work seamlessly. Now, the key thing of this is I'm just having a conversation, and this is just a follow-up message in the conversation that's refining it and taking it in a different direction. And what does ChatGPT say? Great, let's play a fun math game involving Pokemon and nutrition. Question 1. Pikachu and his friends are planning a meal that includes half a cup of cooked rice, but they need to divide it evenly among 3 Pokemon. How much rice will each Pokemon get? And then what does it do? What does ChatGPT do? It waits. It waits for him to answer because it knows that it's playing a game, and then it needs to wait for him to provide input. Now, we normally think about asking questions to generative AI or telling it what to do, but it can also ask us questions and solicit information from us and wait for us to give that information back to it and then respond. And it also understands the concept of a game and turn taking and the rules of the game and what it needs to do at this point in time. And that's really deep reasoning. And then what happens when he goes in and types in the correct answer, which is 1/6? It says, good job, that's correct. It works out the math from it for him. And then it says, question 2, Ash wants to make a smoothie. And he goes on to the next question. And it would keep going and asking him questions over and over and over again on this topic and create a whole game that he could go and interact with. And notice all we did to create this was we basically gave it some paragraphs of text in a conversation. We continued to refine this idea and follow up on it and evolve it. But I thought, as a computer scientist, it's great that he could play a game in ChatGPT, but what if I want to take that out and create some real working software that he could play on an iPad? Can I do that? And so I tell it, let's create code for this in Python. And then I give it some of my domain knowledge as a programmer on what I want for it. And ChatGPT goes and it generates the code. And here's this excerpt of it. And then this is the software running in a browser that he could play on an iPad or he could play on a laptop. Now notice what I did. I went and I basically took content and I iteratively refined it through a conversation. And all I'm going and doing is putting in paragraphs of text, and very, very quickly I'm evolving and creating different drafts of content, which as a human I can go and use or refine and edit. But I'm driving this whole process. It's my creativity, it's my thought that's driving this process. but it's accelerating my productivity and my capabilities and what I can do. And if you think back to our computing capabilities last year, there was really nothing on the planet that could even touch what we just saw, or certainly nothing on the planet that was generally available. Generative AI is absolutely going to transform what we can do in the workplace. And it's going to transform what humans can do, and I'm going to talk about that throughout this primer.